Hi, I'm Jeff DeRiso from Beckman Collaborative, and today I'm going to show you how to use workflows in Zoho campaigns to automate your email marketing process. Workflows allow us to send a sequence of emails, creating unique paths for each contact based on their level of engagement. For example, we can set it up so that someone who clicked a link in the first email will have a different journey from someone who just opened the email but didn't click. This helps us prioritize which leads are the most interested in buying from us and ensures that they stay engaged with our content. So let's get into Zoho Campaigns and I'll show you how it works. Okay, this is Zoho Campaigns. Zoho Campaigns is an email marketing software. So what it allows you to do is basically send mass emails to large groups of people. And as you can see, Zoho Campaigns does integrate with Zoho CRM, as well as several other popular business applications. So to create a workflow, we're going to go to the automation on the left side here. Click that. And by default, it's showing the workflows created by me, but I can also deselect this and select all users in the organization so you can see workflows created by other users as well. So we'll click Create My First Workflow here. And first, it gives us the option to choose from a pre-made template. And these templates are made for common business scenarios. So I would encourage you to take a look through these and see if any of these fit your specific business needs. And it does also give you an idea of the best practices to use. But for now, we'll create a custom workflow to show how we can create one from scratch. So I click Custom Workflow, and we'll name it Test. Okay, so the first thing we do is choose our trigger. And this is what is the first action that happens that sets the whole journey into motion. So we have several options for our trigger. The first is form submission. So someone submits a form on your website or through Zoho Forms, and that submission triggers this workflow. The second trigger is list entry. So when a contact in Zoho Campaigns enters a list, this workflow can be triggered, and the specific criteria can be set within that. We also have a segment of a list. It's just a subset of a larger list. We also have a date trigger. We can trigger it from a date field in our contact, or we can set a date. So I'll drag that out to show you how that works. So we can select our date here, and we can select a specific date instead of a date field and just type in our date, whatever date we want to trigger this workflow. And then we also have the option to, in addition to setting the date criteria, set additional criteria within that. So let's look at some of the other triggers. We also have an email action. So if you're going to send an email in a campaign and you want this workflow only to trigger for people who clicked on that first email, for example, you can set that as your trigger. We can also set a field update trigger. We can set triggers based on tags. The open trigger allows us to attach to custom applications. We have some e-commerce triggers here. We have the cyclic trigger, which is similar to the date trigger, but the cyclic trigger allows us to trigger, let's say, every month, once a year. So if you want the workflow to run periodically, you'd select cyclic trigger. For our purposes of demonstration today, I'm going to select list entry. And we have a testing list for just contacts in our organization. And now I have the option to choose whether this workflow will apply to existing, new contacts, or both. So I'm going to keep it as both. Okay, so now we've configured our trigger. And we have two other tabs over here, Process and Actions. So let's select Process. Now this gives us the ability to further set conditions based on what's going to happen to contacts in this list based on whatever criteria we want to set. So we can set a simple true-false condition. We can set a multi-way condition, meaning if you have a multi-select field in your contact and you have multiple different emails you want to send based on what's in that field, you can select a multi-way condition. We can also select an email activity condition just like we could in our trigger. So we'll drag a simple condition here. So this is just a true or false, and we'll click Configure. Now we can set here another criteria. So any field in our contact, and we can set what the operator is and whatever that condition that we want to set. So for us, we're going to use email, contact email is so we just want to filter, so we only send this workflow to this one email address, which is our test email address. So we're filtering it from our test list down to this one email just for the purpose of demonstration today. So we have two branches that are going to come out now that we've created this true false condition. So if the contacts in this list entering the workflow do not meet this condition, we want to exit them from the workflow. So we want to exit so we'll go to actions here and we select exit from workflow. We drag it out and it automatically connects to the false. So now when someone enters the list, it will check for this condition. If the email address does not equal the one we set, they will exit the workflow. So now we want to set the action for what happens if they do meet this condition. So let's look at our actions menu over here. We have several options for actions. We can send an email. We can send multiple versions of the same email to do A/B testing. We can send a text message or a survey. We can also do things like add someone to a list, add a tag, affect their score, update a field. We can add a wait time. And we also have Zoho CRM actions predefined here, which we'll go over in a minute. For this, I want to send an email. Okay, so now if the condition is true, we're going to send this message, and we click Create Message to configure the message. Okay, so we want to give our message a name. And we can configure our topic. Now, when we do that, it gives us a little checkbox here that says map contacts that are not associated to any topics to this topic. So we want to check this box. And what that means is if a contact enters our workflow and they're not already assigned to this topic, this is going to make sure they are assigned before we can send them this message. So now we'll add a subject line and we'll add contact's first and last name. And we'll add the sender. And we can also configure a custom sender name here. And now we can create the content of our message. This is where we have the option to choose from templates or we can use the plain text editor or HTML editor to create our own custom message here. So I'll select from one of our saved templates in our organization. And I'll use that. And when you're happy with the template, you select Proceed. Okay, so because I've chosen an old, outdated template in our organization, it has found a broken URL. So that's kind of a helpful tip that comes up just to tell you, hey, you might want to double check this before you send it. So now we'll go back to our canvas. Now we have the option to select response here. And here we define what are the separate actions that we want to create different branches in our workflow. So we'll select delivered, opened, and clicked on any link, and click done. Okay, so you see when we did that, what happened was our workflow created 3 separate branches, one for delivered, one for opened, and one for clicked on any link. So imagine you have several hundred contacts in this workflow, and they're all going to get this message. So now, based on what they do next, whether they do nothing, whether they open, or whether they click on a link, we can define a separate action for each one. So let's see. If somebody does nothing and the email just sits in their inbox and never gets opened, we want to exit them from the workflow, of course, because they're not engaged with our content. But we want to give them time to open it. So we're going to add a wait time of 7 days. So we'll give them 1 full week. And if they haven't opened it for 1 full week, then we exit them from the workflow. Okay. So now if someone just opens but doesn't click on a link, well, again, we want to add a wait time to allow them time. And we want to resume the workflow on a business day because we are going to take another action after this. So we'll make sure that we resume the workflow during business hours. We wait 7 days, but we resume during business hours. And then, so this person has opened your first message, but they didn't take further action. So maybe we want to send them another message. So we'll send an email again. So then I'll quickly just configure a second message. Okay, now we've configured our message. Now we need to set our action for a person who clicks on a link. So for this one, we don't want to add a wait time. We want to immediately create a task in our CRM to follow up with this person in a one-on-one. So let's drag this CRM action out, create a task, and we'll click configure. And here's where you choose your CRM details and which module. And then you set the details of your task here. And then we assign the task. And here we set some further criteria within our CRM for how to deal with this contact. Okay, so we've configured our task creation. So when someone clicks the link in our first message, we're going to immediately have a task in the CRM created for a member of the sales team to follow up with this person. We also want to make sure to exit this person from the workflow. So we'll say exit workflow once this task has been created. So now we've created this simple workflow here and we're almost ready to activate it. Before we do that, I want to click this cog here in the top right corner and show you some options that we have. This is where we can enable exit criteria. So allowing us to say contacts that fit this certain criteria are allowed to exit the workflow. So it's just another way to make sure that we're not accidentally exiting people from the workflow who shouldn't be. And then we also have the option to re-enroll contacts in this workflow if we want to. We click apply. Okay, so now I'm ready to test it, so I'll click activate. Now it's reminding us that there's no exit criteria configured and that there's no re-enrollment allowed for this, which is the settings that we just added here in this previous step. And it also tells us that 4 contacts qualify for this workflow. So it gives you an idea of how many people are coming in on this trigger. So let's click launch. We've now activated our workflow, and let's go check our email to see if we get it. Okay, here we are in our email, and now you can see we've received our customized email. It has our name as it was merged in the template, and it has our first name and last name. It has our sender as we configured it in our settings, and it has the message template as we saw it in the viewer. So now let's click a link to make sure we trigger this workflow. Okay. Now we need to check the CRM for our task. Okay, so here we are in Zoho CRM, and you can see our task has been created. We have the contact name from Zoho Campaigns, the email address here. And the task owner is myself, because that's who we assigned it to in our workflow. The other thing we can do is check our logs. So we can come in here and we saw that 4 entered the workflow and 4 exited the workflow. So if we need to debug something or test this, this is going to give us a lot of information about that. We can also go to the message. We can see that only 1 got the message because the other 3 exited the workflow before this 1 got the message. It was sent, it was delivered, it was opened, it was clicked, and we can get a lot more information about that. We can get a detailed report. This is basically a dashboard that gives us an overview of how this workflow is working. So we can see the rate of delivery, the rate of bounce, the click rate, the things that we need to measure are all going to be here on the screen. So that's how you make a workflow in Zoho Campaigns. It gives us a lot of options and it takes a lot of the manual steps out of our email marketing process. As always, you can contact Beckman Collaborative for support. Please subscribe to see more videos like this, and we'll catch you on the next one.